Livonia flopped. It did. It's a map I happen to personally love, but so few people seem to share the same opinion, and the reasons why are probably not what you think. And although Livonia today is completely different to what it once was, it still suffers as a result. And here, I'm going to tell you the full story of why Livonia flopped. If you liked the video, please leave a like or a subscribe, it really helps me out. But without further ado, let's get into the video.
Hey guys, y'all want to go up on the roof and watch a show?
I mean, the odds of me getting attacked here are pretty high, but I also kind of want to see a show. That was not as good as the book. Feel free to let me know what your impression is or was of Livonia. I am genuinely interested and usually do read every comment. Now, Livonia was announced in mid-2019 to a fairly positive reception, with a planned release for later that year. Fans were excited about exploring new terrain with unique environmental challenges and potential new gameplay mechanics, especially with DayZ finally breaking free of its early access a little over a year before. The announcement trailers showcased beautiful forests, wild fields, and eerie remnants of human civilization, setting some pretty high expectations for Chernarus' sister map. And it wouldn't be an exciting video without a twist. These expectations and hopes were short-lived for a lot of players when the first several problems started to emerge. Many players thought it was a bit of a bad faith move given the current state of the base game, and that BI were just trying to capitalize on their recent surge in popularity due to the full release on console and PC. The base game still had many bugs and issues that needed fixing. Releasing a new DLC while the main game was not fully stable seemed unfair to many players. They believed developers should focus on fixing the existing problems in the game players had already paid for before adding new monetized content. This is because at the time, DayZ was plagued with issues, most of which were just left in there, and many of them being arguably game-breaking bugs. In fact, this was so bad that DayZ in general was continually mocked on forums and social media by vocal players who just had enough. So, before Livonia hit, there was a lot of negativity starting to build around it. When Livonia's release date finally came around, the reception was, to say the least, mixed. Some players really liked the new look and the shift from the familiar Chernarus map. Others were disappointed. Livonia's map was smaller and had fewer cities compared to Chernarus, making it feel more empty and less exciting. The south was barren and only really supported one type of playstyle, a sort of nomadic survivalist style with fewer towns to explore and houses to loot. This meant players had to play this one way whether they wanted to or not, focusing on hunting and foraging instead of looting urban areas and exploring exciting places. Some players absolutely loved this, but the majority seemed to prefer the more populated and loot-rich environments, meaning that not only was the south devoid of points of interest, but also players, making it just not very fun to explore. And none of this was helped by Livonia's marketing prior to and shortly after release. While the initial announcement created a lot of excitement, the following promotions just didn't keep up the momentum. There weren't enough strong marketing campaigns to keep up interest and attract new players after the launch, meaning that the players' opinion of Livonia being barren, restrictive, and underdeveloped became synonymous with the DLC, without any real challenge being offered by BI. And none of this was helped by the lack of features that accompanied it or the lack of fixes. And this was all before the true DayZ content creator surge, which although now is probably DayZ's greatest and cheapest marketing method, back then wasn't really as important to DayZ's growth. Yet. But because of the alienation of its players and lack of answers to why players had to spend extra money to access Livonia, which offered very few new things and had lots of mixed reviews, players felt like the new content didn't offer enough to justify the extra cost. Even server owners quickly went back to favoring Chernarus, because why open a server on a map where you're guaranteed to get fewer players because no one sees a reason to purchase it? But it got even worse, because another big problem with Livonia was, somewhat ironically, the growing success of DayZ itself, because this popularity meant more people were investing their time in DayZ, which created hard competition from other free maps available on PC. They offered the same assets but a more expansive experience with a more varied and balanced landscape, accompanied by map-specific mods and their own community marketing attempts. And the best part for players was this was all free because Bohemia prohibits the monetization of mods. Hey, who knew? And despite mods only being on PC, this even somewhat affected console, which at this point was slowly becoming Livonia's main focused consumer, because the lack of interest on PC meant there was a lack of content creation, and a lack of content creation for Livonia meant that fewer creators were playing and promoting it. So even when console players wanted more information, the things they wanted just wasn't there with many of their favorite streamers. Namalsk in particular, well, of course we're going to mention Namalsk. Namalsk in particular maintained its popularity and became one of the most streamed maps alongside Chernarus. This made Livonia even less appealing because players kept seeing these maps being played instead of it and talked about way more. In fact, Namalsk was so played and has such a strong legacy because of it that DayZ's new map Sakal is heavily influenced by community feedback, greatly inspired by the landscapes and features Namalsk came with, such as complex temperature mechanics and diverse weather effects. So when held side by side, PC players just didn't see the point in Livonia when Namalsk and other maps offered so much more for, well, free, and console players were equally tempted by what could have been. This variety at no extra cost completely removed the need factor of Livonia. No matter the platform they were on, players didn't need that map for an enhanced experience. Everything DayZ had to offer was contained in the base game. Charging for a map many players didn't understand the value in left it at the back of the list. Livonia was digital surplus, which leads into the next issue it had. Livonia released in a time where DayZ modding had just started to gain traction, but it was still somewhat in its infancy, meaning modders were just learning to create mods for Chernarus. Introducing a new official map was not their priority. Actually, this was also something hindered by the perceived paywall, because creating Livonia specific mods was just less appealing because there were fewer players and less demand. So the majority of Livonia's mods were universal but not specific, limiting its individuality even more. And even without the other mods other servers had amassed, technical issues continued to plague it. Its dense forests and detailed environments caused performance issues, especially with frame rate drops in wooded areas. So players who tried to immerse themselves in said dense forests and detailed environments often found their experience hampered by these problems. Despite updates and patches from developers, these performance issues stuck around for a while, hurting Livonia's reputation and making it less popular than it already was. This technical drawback made the gameplay experience a frustration, with server requirements and miscommunications about needing the Livonia DLC further alienating the player base. This confusion created a negative first impression for many, discouraging current owners from continuing to play and turning potential players away from investing. As time went on, Livonia's struggles became more apparent. It was clear that the map couldn't compete with the more popular Chernarus and the many free alternatives created by the community. Despite its brighter feel, more detailed cities and unique setting, Livonia couldn't hold the players' interest for long. The initial excitement turned into disappointment as players found themselves going back to the maps they knew and loved, and which were vastly way more populated. And although it's now free, and after 2022's transformation with new points of interest, new features and new incentives to play, its reputation still holds it back from achieving its true potential as a must-play map. But if you do plan to give Livonia a try, whether you're brand new to it or have multiple hours in it, I can almost guarantee this video will change how you experience it and is a must-watch for anyone jumping in. But as always, until next time.